also talking about blogs and communities on websites, and you said that there was a difference between The Guardian and the Birmingham Post. That although in some ways we think it was bad,
Yeah.
it's a scale problem.
It's a difference of scale. The Birmingham Post blog is like a rather disputatious extended family. The Guardian blog's just a lot of strangers, all with funny names, who you don't see from one day to the next, and you need to remember them. So that's why I don't bother with the Guardian. Don't bother contributing, because you're just one voice drowned out in a sea of hundreds, and there's no point really.
So if we looked at the development of the Birmingham Post blogs in the future, would you like them to sort of still have that?
Well, I mean, that's rather contradictory. It's not what I want, it's what is best for the paper, and Mark was making the point that more readers essentially means more money.
But then again, we could still look at having small pockets of blogs on different subjects, so that you have a little communities built up within those areas.
Yeah, well, if you could do that, yeah, that might work. Yeah. It's a balance between too much fragmentation, isn't it, and too much size.
And what is it that makes you want to comment on a blog? What do you tend to find is the thing that will make you bother to...
things spark your interest. I mean, Sid Langley did something on a 12-string guitar I found quite interesting, quite much to his surprise, I think. He made some comment in the middle of the post that I'd be bored by it, but I wasn't in the slightest. Anything lawish I tend to comment on, because there's a lot of misinformation around particularly discrimination law. Some of the stuff on the Stirrer, for example, is completely wrong, and I can't resist commenting and trying to say this is the right way it is. Nothing in particular, just anything that strikes your fancy. I don't know. I'm not going to read about my main interests on the Birmingham Post, which are basically jazz and food. So at least on the blog.
Do you tend to go to other sites for that sort of thing?
Yeah, Birmingham Post, not Birmingham Post, Birmingham Plus, the restaurant review, contribute to that quite a lot. Jazz is one or two, I chip in on. So I think you're a newspaper, so your blog should be about news essentially. I mean, I've never really seen the point of the lifestyle blogs. They just seem to be a sort of disparate collection of people chatting about something, which I think would be much better if the journalists had a blog where they could reflect on, like if Christine Savas had a blog that she could reflect on in a non-libelous way some of the experiences she's had trying to get stories. I mean, that would be interesting, and that might draw in people. I mean, like Paul Dale. I mean, he does that to some extent, but he's one amongst many of them.
And we were talking earlier about maybe journalists being fearful about getting critical comments on blogs. As someone who admittedly comes across quite critical in blogs, is there a message you'd give to journalists about engaging?
Well, I think I can accept that some readers are sort of picky and one-uppy and just like pointing things out because they like pointing things out that are wrong. But I think if you come across what is basically a constructive comment, even which is critical, then you should respond to it in a positive way. So I think you've got to pick your post. If somebody's basically nasty, which except I may well have been in the past, then you ignore it all. But if somebody's trying to say, well, why I don't understand this. For example, I asked Paul Dale once about the big TV screen that Birmingham City Council were going to put up, because it wasn't clear from his post. Was it bad advice from the planning city, the planning committee, or was it good advice the planning committee had ignored? And he admitted it was a good question, but said he couldn't remember. So I suppose it's fair enough.
And you mentioned that from a reader's point of view, traditionally it hasn't seemed that journalists have been very comfortable with accepting criticism.
Well, I think that's the same point. I'm not quite sure why it is. Whether journalists think they're sort of superior, or whether there's some sort of career downside if their stories have to be corrected. whether they're just naturally sensitive people. I don't really know. I don't know enough journalists to be able to ask them the question. That's a question you should be asking. I should be asking you rather the other way around.
I think it's a natural reaction among people that if they feel targeted, they'll retaliate, and maybe sometimes journalists forget that they're in a position where they can't really do that.
Well, Mark said much the same thing. That back to the you can dish it out, but if you want to dish it out, you should be able to take it when people say you've got this wrong or you've misunderstood.
So, if you could get one thing changed, I know there's lots of things you'd quite like to get changed on the Birmingham Post website, but on the blogs and the interactive side of it, if there's one thing you could change, what would it be?
Well, I think if it's going to work, people have got to work at it, and one of the problems you've got is that a lot of your bloggers don't blog. There was that guy Pint Size, and I thought this was going to be good, about 9 months ago when he reviewed a couple of pubs, and 9 months on, he still reviewed a couple of pubs. He hasn't reviewed a pub for ages. And that was an opportunity wasted, I think. He could have been like the pub's Paul Fulford, who does blog very often, very regularly. You go out, you write about it, that sort of thing, and you could apply that across the board. But if you look at the last posted dates on some of your bloggers, they're months ago. And then you think, oh, well, why am I bothering to come back here if nothing's happening?
So if we got a few more people in, invigorated them and tried to get them got them to blog regularly, you think that would...
I mean, you've got a fair amount of deadwood there, and you need some new people, something interesting to say, and say it regularly. And then you'll find your little micro-blog niches, and you build up a little community.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Oh, pleasure.
And please keep going on the side.
Oh, yes, I will. Yes.